most powerful commodity is information, guys. Where information comes from, and all in line conditions inside of you through tractions. All lines of high center interference. It's profitable and line connection your system of also adaptation. It's you coming into your technologies first. Let me say that again. Technology viewed first, understand location of your settings, encoding, decoding, or anything location of its binaries. Now you come into your own technology, get you a better understanding of what's coming next in your system's applications, especially when you come into future adaptations settings of real line conditions in real time. Now the team is going to understand how to navigate this system. And the only way to get there in this application is in real time with 200,000 years in the future. This is a process that's going to get you in higher levels of the memory of the mind that takes position locations of what can happen in real time. This also processes you how to navigate your system of what's going on through calculations. Being totally aware of everything that's going around you. Understanding how to really get into that set locations. You know how to drive a car, that's great. But can you drive a car in 200,000 years in the future? Do you understand the technology? Do you understand the advance of its technology? Do you even understand, can you even grasp the technology in that settings? What's actually living in the process of its now, its evolution. So technology of you first, and then it wakes up and line screens the high center interference of its mind, of itself. The mind is of itself, understands not just the navigation, not just the consoles of travel, but the position lines, high calculation modems and Wi-Fi's and your satellites and tractions. Bouncing you out to all communication to its system is all about understanding how to get to the mind and navigation to your settings. This opens all signals through notifications. Let's go through track applications in a four-way stop. Track application. Now, let's line settings and cross-line screen. So location and cross-line screen. Let's go locations right over left, set locations left over right. Okay? So you're in the center line in communication to setting. Oh, you see that? It disappeared. You see that? It disappeared. And I reappeared. Is that wild? All right. Frequency screens, data lines, screen lines, high center interference, electrical line communication setting, inter-application of its highways, and travel communications. Point lines attractions. 2024 line rotations, track application lines, 200,000 line air. Set lines have 3 lines signals and high calculation setting. Right? Put position travel lines, 2 lines attractions, point lines attracts. Box triangulation box, put lines of team, inter-application system, allocate timeline centers, put them allocate mind line screen, high interference, cerebral cortex to design and line setting lines, adaptation, identification code screens, and set locations of operation. Center correlations and center attractions. Right? 1, 2, 3. You guys are there. 200,000 years in future line. All right, so setting signals at all lines of modification is understanding the navigation screens. Directing lines of energized inset location and travel lines puts everything in position of travel communication with point lines, attractions, and data highways. Center communication lines of high center interference. Protocol screens, XD thousands on line connecting high centers, creating laser grids, power nets, power screens, power timelines, power interference, and position of its program and set location. Have fun. Clocking settings, high center interference, 30 minutes on track. All right. 2024 equals lines of course set at 200,000 year line future. Direct line settings, high calculation standstill. Position line calculation setting. Electronic line communication lines of spiders are coming up in line rotations, just scanning you. Proceed line condition your settings. Go through your iPods and line center high position travel calculation point systems. Calculation iClouds, direct modification lines. And center line position to your pods. Center coordination attractions, all lines of high center interference, alliance and separation of travel and point systems. All right, point lines attractions, ground lines centers, and set locations. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4 platforms and line signals. Set lines of platform communication lines of cycles and set generation screens. Position line calculations, 1XD1000, 2 line centers, low grids, high calculation, high screens, high centers, high calculation screen locations. Direct modification. Plasma green line, screen lines, high center interference. Open sequence, open panels. Power correlates and setting, inter-application, high center interference. Earth lines, rotation cycles. Direct lines of signals, modification cycles, generation screen location, high calculations. Earth line habitation zones, plasma generation screen lines, and Platitude lines, high locations. Point lines of track lines, energetic domes, inside location of travel. Point lines and divisions, platforms 1 and positions, platforms 2, towers of communication, platforms 3, and towers of communication of 4 settings. Track to its communication lines and its interference. Platform in position cross line signals, 1, 2, 3, 4-line change line communication of programs. Direct lines of modification of data across line centers of point lines of tracks, high center interference, and position program communications, dimensional line sales, interactions, and face recognitions. Okay, done my equation. Have fun. So I set up the 200,000 air and Platitude screen interference, adaptation lines, and simulation graph calculation line conditions. So in line condition high interference, you're not in a simulator. You're actually 200,000 years in the future in the position of its real now. The real line setting in all line communication. Live in the cycles and all track locations. You have to learn how to empty the mind through travel mechanisms. Over power, over surge, over correlation. Energy correlation track lines puts all lines to division. Now they allocate line center sets, film strips to set design. Future adaptation line screens hide lines as communication interference in positions program. Directs modification lines as cycles. Let's go through the data streams. Box lines, high center locations, lacing lines, communications programs. Line setting, high interference, electrical line communications setting, and set locations. I disappeared again. You see that? I disappeared again. Isn't that wild? So plasma generation screens and set position calculation. All right, so we got center core line settings, platforms over line settings, high traction. Okay, so we got drones. Okay, drones are line condition probing line settings. One's drone right there. Center correlation line condition next T1000 over there. And we got a next T location over there. Okay, and we got a transformer unit. Center correlation track lines, high center interference, in position of program. Okay. So allocate time screens and high center location of setting, positions of platforms and track location lines and interference, and platforms of 2 and track locations. Direct modification screen lines and high center interference is all levels how to set position of ground lines. This opens all signals and all communication settings. To understand the recognition of time sequence puts all levels of charge lines, connections, provocation and navigation line conditions. Console 1 lines of 3, 2 lines of 1, L line shapes, track locations, and all calculation lines. Setting correlation settings of box frame. Direct lines of communication, high center interference, and traffication. Crossing signal. Allocate time strains, triangulation, reset, position programs. Light saves modification. Signal line calculation setting. Put in line track division lines and screen location adaptation cycles. All right. So getting the highways and track location line screens puts everything in set locations. All right. All right, so I know exactly what it's like to actually live in the cycles of communication setting and travels. Point lines of high center interference, all lines, electrical grids, ground lines, power generation, screen lines, high center interference, communications. Now, 200,000 years, we don't have stoplights. Obviously, you're going to see that in track locations. So what we're doing, we're going through frame by second line, screen lines, and high calculation system, but the modern screen location timeline centers allocates timelines as stargates. So the actual communication to the system is 3 Stargate line communication of panels and line communication of its position. So it's actual Stargate that you go through the calculation of high streams. So the high streams into your Stargates and line communications to its star portals directs the signals mapping sequence location of pi that generates line screens and high center interference. Platitude lines of set location calculations. Platitude line screens and high center interference opens all lines at high center location of its platforms and set location of measures in dimensional lines at set location. That disappeared. Okay, so it's going very, very fast. That's why I'm disappearing. Vortexing, platitude line screens, high line center interference, jump scars, direct lines of modification lines of box line rotation centers, and 200,000 line screen lines, high center location center identification codes. Put the lines and screen lines of the team and lines of lacing line corresponding track lines. Bounce position line center interference, 250 line screen lines of ramp. Line connections all levels of volume, vast velocity, and lines of acceleration mocking. Mach line centers and line center location of 0, 1 to 1. This applies to division lines of center location and calculation line screens and data processing. Layers and track locations, electrical line communication settings, and point lines of traction, high calculations. All right, so that's done through equation. Time frames in line rotation centers. Now the Apser line has a sky green line cross. 4 lines of cycles and high travel. Okay, point lines, attractions, point lines, and systems. So it's really identifying everything through Stargate line connections, so your traffic lights and oppositional point centers of travel. This is a traffic light in this application. Okay, modulation screens, you're here in sending positions calculations. On your lacing lines, 2 panels correlation sending the acceleration line of location grid in set position of travel. Okay, now each line has a correlation line connected to coloration light. These are laser high calculation sending electrical lines and wires, directing modification screen lines to high interference of its location grid. Crossing line signals, open lines of panels, line signal up in a line rotation surface, and modulations 3 line screens in positions calculation. Now, directing modification line screens is all about understanding how to travel through its platforms of communications. Indicates line centers, line connection high center positions program. Direct modification line calculation setting to its off calculations. Setting up dimensional scales and line rotation surface. Triangulation reset positional programs to applications. Allocate time streams to high set application with settings. Directing modification to center line and correlation setting of track lines in high positional platforms and another dimensional lines of universe location setting and track location. Very complicated stuff. All right, so laser grid screens, Skynet line settings, high interference or forced position of line centers of screen location adaptation cycles, set structure of the line, divine line, highest interference, the travel position of point centers attractions, directs modification screen lines, times screens, sets the platform communication line, screen line interference, and position of programs, allocate timelines of high setting. Platitude line screen location navigation screen lines, time screen line interference into dashboards, directs modification lines, highest interference, platitude screen location lacing lines, graphical screen lines, high adaptation cycles. So you have a PIP on the wall line, screen line centers, in the right line signals location of teleportation beacon. So it follows the signal on the plasma generation screen. The laser calculation screen interference opens up all calculation lines to its ground. Plasma generation screen location of plasmazine walls treats travels and communication setting navigation cycles that retriangulates the position of its program and supplication of its setting, that sets up all lines of sky grid line setting location of seconds, minutes, and hours, minutes, and seconds in real time and track applications. Space and modulation screens, high center interference, plasma generation, screen location of flowers, and line connecting system and travel communication of point centers. Puts lines that calculates high center interference, platitude line centers of alignments, and line position location to its energy grids, line connection setting, and all levels of rotation surface, and facilities at ground set location. All right. All right. It's complicated, isn't it? Trying to explain everything that's going on in position to your settings, right? So again, in position, you know exactly what it is, right? So waving cycles and travel, point lines attractions. This is you going in position, right? So all line connections, commanding centers, location lines, imagination ground lines, high center interference, and position programs. Now, line condition is its command center, its applications. That's your communications of its compute system, computer line rotation surface. There's the computer. So it's actually in line setting line to its open sequence. This is the open sequence location to its UFO. Calculation line screen, highest interference, which is Windows application line condition setting and travel. Point lines attractions, highest interference. I cycles and high calculations of platforms. Direct lines of I line signals, pi generation screen lines, and 2-3 line rotation cycles and applications. Power generation lines, plasma generation screen location of 3 patterns. Direct modification lines, highest interference. Ground lines, circulation rotations, open up cycles, and ground line location setting, and travel calculations, point lines attractions. Direct lines, lacing lines of patterns, setting communication in row graph, screen line condition, high setting, and travel communications. Point lines of division, allocates timeline streams. Platitude lines of row graph communication setting and track locations. Direct modification screen lines, highest interference. Plasma generation screens and the 3 track locations, higher levels of provision of cycles of communication of travel position. Okay, so you really have to understand how to navigate wherever you are in any air and set locations. Okay, so that's just the basic grounds. 200,000 years in line screen, high interference, location, and setting. Okay, all right. So in the modulation screens, you have space modulation. Now, space modulation is understanding the consoles of communication screen lines. So finger point lines, direct lines modifications, channel positions, cross line signals, open signal line positions. Remember, your imagination comes in line saying you don't see the console until you use your mind. The mind opens up all gravity line screens, location grids, pip on box line rotation, center track locations. You can change and shift your chair. And in positions, you can do here, and you can do here. And position, you can do here, and you can do here. You got a full cycle of communication of a chair that rotates, all right, in set locations, right? You also can spin line in the 360 panel and line rotate the cycles and see outside this window, or line communication line centers and see out this side's location. There's 4 panels of 4 windows, and each line to each UFO. This directs the line communication to your SkyGrid and line screens and set location navigation system. So north is always north in reference. North, 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 and north. Okay? So north is only used as a reference. So wherever you go, your chair is positioned. It's magnetic line screen and high set location calculations. So when you're sitting in a chair, you're in navigation screen. All right. So pivotal points is really understand how to see yourself in modulation screen lines. Let's go through 3 line centers and travel, point lines, attractions, and line conditions. 1, 2, and 3 point line provision. Modulation screens, high center interference, cross line calculation setting, cross line setting. Modulation screen lines, 3 weathers, 3 weathers, 3 weathers, and Fibonacci line screen as center calculations. Point lines of tracks and modulation screen locations. Now, this is a module. Okay, setting remotes, power lines, change lines. It has gadgets on 3 line cycles and set locations, 2 lines of track lines and high center interference in set location, and position line centers of 2 lines of operation cycles and ground set locations. Okay, you have to learn how to operate it, right? This is all through in set location, all right? So center communication of point lines of tracks on 2 points, sets location of 3 line centers, understanding how to really get in track locations. Finger point setting, okay? So try to get into the finger point lines and modulation screens. It's just tapping the screen, okay? So get in that line interference. Is offline is communications. Fourth lines of change, direct lines modifications, change the constellation screen lines into its position and navigation. This allocates position time center that puts line communications, a flux capacitor, and 2 channels of calculation. All right, so directing communication line screens, guys, you have to understand how to use your numerification, your patterns lines. Certification of 0, position of 1. Add 2 line screens, 3 line provision. It has line condition setting. You have 12 gauges, right? So you guys have to understand the line calculation setting when you have a 5th gear, a 6th gear, which is a standard H, right? But you also have a standard 12. So that's 1 lines of 2 grounds, but you're in modulation of left and right, right over left. So to navigate a UFO is in the mind conception of thought. Directing lines of modification of thought becomes the action line calculation setting, but no lines of communication or motion line, because that changes everything through traction. Okay? So what you have to understand is how to use it through modulation, all through your constant calculations of travels. Okay? 3-point line centers. Flux capacitor changes direct signals and calculation line setting in line rotation of surface. This angle points the system in all line communication setting. So you have a navigation lines of a console and line condition of travels. Point lines its division locations and clockings its location. All right. That's just 1 line setting. Okay. But you have to understand your finger point line screens. Set locations, direct lines, console calculation line screens, ready to go. All right. So in that line condition, it's already in the mind adaptation surface. So you're traveling this way, you're traveling this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. You're traveling everywhere all at once, okay? So it's really interesting when you look at the navigation lines of its console, of what's going in direct locations through your navigation line cycles. It's redirecting panels of where you are in instructions, okay? So it's very powerful when you see it through modulation. All right, so once you get into that, you come into this. It goes this way, it goes this way, it goes this way, it goes this way. Let's start with that, okay? Knowing exactly what you can do with your teleportation vehicle, okay? Laser lines, screen lines, 2 application line screens, direct lines, modification and lines of 2 line screens, right? Inline position locations, all right? Sets location this way, sets location this way, okay? So you have to understand that line condition system because you have traffic coming this way, okay? And you have traffic coming this way in set locations. And then you have traffic coming this way in set locations. And then you have traffic coming your way in this location. All right, so you have to really understand how to use the consoles, okay? Especially when you get into ground lines, screen lines, non-adaptation of surface, re-angle point the system of travel position locations in its calculation of road graphing screens at data highways and trunk locations. Now, we wanted Platitude lines of docking. Docking is extremely important because of the location grid. So it's kind of like a pit stop. You position your track lines and your high generation screen line, you add a crystalline screen line interference. So it's like energy to a car, or line position locations to gas to a car. So what you're doing is you're adding position location of plasma generation screen location to its engine of itself that crystallizes its system location of its uranium, sets line communication to its position of its program, allocates position of time centers and high rotation of its platforms, and communication of travels back in set location. Okay, so you're directing lines of communications, right? You're navigating yourself, right? You're trying to understand how to navigate your system. You're going from here to there. But remember, everything is coming at you all at once, right? So it knows exactly where it's going. It's just you have to understand your navigation of your mind and where you're going through intent, because you're not in observation. You're intent. So this is process faster, 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 faster. Know exactly where you're going in your travels, okay? All through console. All right. So once you get the Platitude screen lines, it allocates position of portals. Portals come in and track location line conditions where you can vortex. Okay. So you take track lines, vortex inside positions calculation. So you go from here and vortex. Vortex, you're over here and you're coming out in position to its location. So you go from here, out and in. Okay. So remember, this is 200,000 years in the future than now. So you have to really understand how this all works, right? All through its technology of you inside, through the mind. Okay? This is going to get you out of your emotional setting to free the space of the mind and understand the navigation of what you're doing. What you're doing. Okay? Look how powerful it is. Okay? Yes, I know. You have to drink a lot of water because you guys are there. How does it feel? How does it feel to be in real time of where you are in line condition setting of a road graphing calculation system to a highway of 200,000 years in the future? Okay. It's not easy, is it? All right. So once you understand the tractions and everything through modulation screens, you have to understand all lines of different lines of consoles. Now, each line signal has the lines of seconds, minutes, and hours lines. So this is where you can time lock your settings, which basically you can vortex back in time, right? So it all depends what you want through your intent, because your mind line, your screen lines, high center interference is changing so fast in position travel lines. But you've got to understand how to go through this through correlation. Look how powerful it is. Really look at what goes on. Okay? All right. So in set locations, you obviously know we're not ready there, but you have to be prepared. And the only way you can be prepared is knowing exactly what's going on, right? All right, so once we get into the data line screens, we come into the AMI Highway. AMI Highway is a line screen that's above the system, beyond the system in set locations. That's the AMI Highway. This is a data highway. That's the difference. Ground settings, space modulations, all calculation, right? Data highways, AMI Highway, right? It's a higher lying, high center, high positions complication. Platforms, they travel faster in settings and calculation. Okay, so they know what they're doing through the data line screens. And the intelligence information already knows exactly where they're traveling, right? So we got 4 line signals, space lines, time lines, ground lines, 4 communication lines with portals and track locations that you can go through. Direct lines of modulation screen lines that vortex you. It sucks you in, right? So you're here and you want to go here and set locations, right? But you can set the line, the right molecule design line or anything, modulation screen lines, you get sucked in that way, right? So you're going back in time now and set locations. Now, in set positions calculations, if you want to go forward, you got to set an accelerator, speed lines, screen lines, and high center interference. Now you're good to go and track location. Now, there's a lot of communication settings to understand what's going on, right? So don't add emotion. You'll go forward. Add emotion, you'll go back. You understand? You'll get sucked in a portal dimension line screen at high calculations position of its program and set location of its calculation. You don't want to do that, right? That overrides the line centers, your data highways, and it affects everything through OMI highways in some locations, right? So no emotion when you're traveling. So it's very powerful when you're in that position. Now you can line signal and open the line channels. That puts lines of portal communication lines at teleportation streams in 3 set locations. Travel calculation on point lines attractions. Direct modifications opens lines of channels. Channel communication line fluctuates as communications and sending tractions. Now this is where you have direct line connections to your Earth and line center of high interference, sets lines of tether and communication line system, a colossal communication setting, and satellite communications, all levels of surface and travel applications. So you're keeping yourself aware of what's going on in calculation of Earth, power generation screens, allocate timelines, and line rotation your OMI, and your data highways and travel applications all at once. Okay? It's incredible, isn't it? All right. So get into this line calculation first to understand travel. Now, once you get into that, it's like riding a bike. You take off those connection settings of those wheels, you start riding your bike, right? You take off those training wheels, and that's where you guys are. So you have to really understand location in your settings. So we get in that position travel lines. Each line has a platform in set position, right? So next 8,000 comes in, line signals, line connections, all laws of high calculations, platform 1 and traction. Sets correlation settings of platform line conditions of 2 through traction. Directs modification lines of 3 lines of traction high position of 4 lines of traction. Directs modification lines of high center interference in position location. There's Asgard and track location. Okay. So, you have to really understand the mind and what it's doing through its own travel calculation line system, right? We also have tolls. Everybody knows what that is. You know what a toll is, right? You go into a different area now. Prohibitive zones. Places you go and places you do not go, all right? They track location line connections, high centers of 1 in position of 2, 3, and 4 track location, all right? Now, outskirts line, screen lines, high center interference, you're no longer in the towns of the cities and the holographic set locations. You're on your own, right? So you have to really focus on yourself first, know exactly where you are in navigation and set connections, all right? All right, so when you get in those line communication, you have circuits. Now these panels, you correlate the line sendings or emotional line tractions. The emotional line track sets lines of perimeters, sets lines of security and track locations. So if you're offline position location, you add a 4 lines, you can communicate right away with Pluto communication. Pluto will come in, sets lines, XT1000 will come in, Platitude line screen, put you back on the platform of communication line screens and set position notes travel. Okay? If you have a problem, right? Through your data of highways. It's like getting stuck in nowhere and you can't start your car, right? XT1000s come in, you get detect high center interference and Platitude screen interference, more open state locations and line send locations. Pluto comes in, line sendings and high travels, right? 2-track line provision, center calculations, right? Direct modification lines is center lines to high center location in the system. Yes, exactly. Using the hand information is good for this. Practice, right? Not just the one hand, left hand, because you're connected to the earth and you're connected to space. So you're trying to balance that out, right? So, but it's a standard, okay? So it can be anything through a standard 1, standard 2, standard 12. It can be anything in line connection setting. Higher levels of the mind, higher levels of modulation, higher levels of speed, higher levels of travel, higher levels of navigation, okay? Higher levels of OMI highways. All right, you got data highways and OMI highways, okay? But you have to really understand, if you get in trouble, you connect with right away with Pluto communication, all right? Get you back in signals, Platitude line screens, back in rotations, back in tractions, information, okay? So Platitude screens is knowing exactly how to go through a box line frame, has a correlation line track and line condition system and travel position of its program. The high calculation streamline connection setting has an energetic dome that sets lines of correlation track lines and high center interference. All right. So platforms and line rotations and travels in location to its position all through its calculation. Okay. Very powerful when you understand the settings of what's going on through you. Right. So So start with this. Really get to understand how to navigate the roads and graphs and all calculation line system. Then you get a line calculation setting to all levels in track location. Okay, things are coming at you. You know exactly how to direct and redirect. How to inbound, outbound. Inbound line send location is tracking communications. Outbound line calculation setting is habitation zones that you're not supposed to be in. Right? So you have habitation zones and inhabitation zones. All right, we'll get into that through transit line communication setting and travel. Point lines, attractions, and high center interference. So you guys basically have gas stations, right? Well, we don't refer them as gas stations, right? We refer them as crystalline screens. All right. So in that line center interference, basically filling up your position location, your XT1000 and track location through all calculation lines. An energization line, screen, high center interference, Platitude line, rotation centers, track communication setting, atomic screen lines, the calculation line fuels up the distant location of crystalline and set location. Right. Once it fills up in track location, you can travel on in lines of platforms of communication. Okay. Direct lines of panels, traffic coming in all different directions and set locations. Okay. So, yeah, crystals, uranium, yeah, Uranus. That's where all the connections are. But you just understand the body itself becomes its own mechanism of travel, right? So an acceleration line screen that sets position to cellular. The particle line screen and high interference of the sub in line condition setting to all levels into its position of its particle system, puts everything in calculation line conditions, puts all communication line screens into waves and communications of line setting locations in setting. Okay, very powerful, isn't it? All right, so putting yourself in 200,000 line years in set location of travel. So, okay. It's incredible, isn't it? When you really start to understand the direction signals or location of your system, right? Now, obviously, you guys are in 2024, but let's add the equation location of technology in real time and really understand what it is and what's going on in the mind system. This is going to process you and get you out of the emotional system. Okay? Most advanced class to date. Yeah, exactly. So once you understand the process, in all communication system, you're letting yourself go through navigations. You're letting yourself go through flow of recognitions. You're not thinking, okay? If you get an XT1000, the Platitude line centers that just came out of a portal in communications, and you're just basically here, coming in this system and its applications, right? And it's coming your way, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Right? Platitude screen line is coming in this way in traction, right? What are you going to do? Right? So you have to understand the 2-second rule. Always think 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 steps ahead of time without even thinking. You already know in position there's going to be a 4-way stop. So you're always ahead of the game. You're always in that flow of the game. You're always looking ahead of the game. Okay? You're not looking directly at the game. You're already there of the mind itself. But you have to understand the realism of its travel, of where you go, and any error in position to its location. 25,000 years, 50,000 years. Once you're there, you know exactly how to navigate your system through console. Okay? Because everything is set up in the same operation, just different lines at different frequencies, at different lines of space and time, of different errors in set location of its planets. All right, so let's say we got a planet here in line setting, in position. You're connected to Saturn now in set location. There's Saturn, right? So inner line calculation setting in track location, you got to set up location grid. Sets his line calculation setting and travels. I told you exactly what goes on in set location. So comes into graph calculation lines, electrical line of communication, directing lines of panels, and set location your setting, right? Go with communications, line connection setting. You got a tractor beam, center line communication of Saturn. Doesn't understand you through identification. It gets you to identify your system. You don't identify your system, it brings you in all through tracking device and set locations. Okay, it brings you in. Now you're in Saturn. Saturn opens up its planet, and now you're inside. All right. So you have to really understand how this all works now, guys. So the mind lines, how you use your finger point line centers of track locations. 2 consoles, 3 consoles, 4 consoles, or 5 or 3 line positions and tractions, and 2 lines of signals and set location. Okay. So once you get into that for modification, everything comes in balance in setting the travels, all direct location your settings, and all calculation. All right. All right. All through lines of travel, guys. All through lines of travel. Okay. That's what you got to get balanced with in all calculations. All right. Very, very amazing. All right. Know exactly what you're doing through the mind without even thinking. It's not in process, location, line conditions. Your thoughts are leaving your systems and becoming all calculation lines of the space of the mind itself. The mind's trying to stand you through interspecs. It's trying to stand you through interdimensional. It's trying to stand you through interline calculations. It's trying to stand you through interface. It's trying to stand where you are in set location of the mind itself. Okay? So, flowing in space, freaking out where. Oh, you guys are gonna love this, and all position locations calculation, knowing that you're actually there. I'd explain that to anything in calculation line screens, where it comes in all adaptability, like everything has a life force that's living in its now in set locations. And I pause. You see that? You see that? Came closer and went pause. I disappeared 3 times and pause once in set locations. So it's amazing how we come into all levels of attractions, all levels of high center interference in travel and communication. Okay? You've got to get into the settings now, because that's what you're coming into, especially with the team, to understand how to go through space, how to go through motivations, through mobilizations, and anything in high-tech line connections of its technology, a set design that is set for you through navigation. Okay? Okay. Now it's already been 36 lines in high center interference. I'll take you guys out in traffication once it reaches 40. 40 screen lines high center interference, waiting on signal, 2024, 2000 settings of high interference, 200,000 line screens. Track to its provision line cycles. Once it gets to 40 line screen lines, high center interference, 3 track location system, you guys will be back where you are in traction. All right, so the mind is in a correlation setting of high interference. It puts all levels of high calculation theory positions in confirmation. Directing lines of modification cycles, line setting, high calculation modification. No, I have to bring you back, McCall. Okay, your reverberation line screen, high interference, we're coming at galaxy shower. A galaxy shower is line condition of meteor shower, the rotation cycle. So what we're doing is we're reconstructing the zone lines into its Omni highways so we can set up a new track location setting to travel. This position location comes from the transformers, the androids, and the cyborgs. So in line center high interference, it's all position location construction. You have construction, so do we. Okay? So there's a reason why we have a high calculation position of this program, directing lines of modification in your cycles. Travel calculation of point lines attractants on your platforms is really understand how to position your travel lines. It comes in a 3-line provision. Okay? Sets correlations lines of travels in a 2-line calculation setting. Position line calculation going through its dimensional of its portal and set locations. Coming out through channels, back in tractions, coming in outline settings and high line positions to its new line rotation surface and track location. Going from here, come from here and out. Okay? So, knowing through the portals lines and the stargates, Stargate allocates the timeline screen that sets lines of perimeters over line screen. Center correlations of tracks, center lines of platforms, and center positions calculations. Now, Platitude line screen high interference, higher levels of traffic comes in high positions flow. Travel line screen high center interference has position of its program and application of travel. Directing line communication setting has a platform of its own system and all calculation to its position. Platitude screen interference, that's where all XT1000s comes out in track locations all at once. So it's a traffic flow in position of traffic itself that's in position location to its setting. That comes out all at once, right? So we also get traffic jams in space, just like you do. Everything you go through, we go through, okay? So that's how this all works in connections. You have to find the traffic flow of yourself in set locations. Know exactly what you're doing through modification settings and portal calculations. Now, it's really interesting too when you go from this line setting, you can have a high calculation. Let's say you came from here. You just came out, right? You came out. Now you can platitude underground into space. Okay? What that does is spins the molecule setting and high travel line centers in set locations. You go through a tunnel line. It center lines its communications. You go through a swivel line rotations into another dimensional lines of space and trapplication to another universe in set locations. Okay? These are the things you can do once you understand the technologies of you. Okay? So you swivel down right here. Right? So you go around the belts. This is the Astra belt. This is the Colossal belt. You go around the system and set locations. Okay? So it's pretty amazing how we can align set these high track locations. All right, so you're up through equation. All right. Yep. You have fun? You have fun? How real it is now, linking this to real time? How you can process your system and set locations of the technology that we're all coming in and setting? Okay. All through travel, mechanism linking and setting, all calculations modified. Okay. So, what does everybody think about that now? All right. And it's all in here, all through navigation in your settings, better balance, better communication in your systems. All through travel mechanism setting line conditions, guys. Very powerful when you come into all of that through modulation. All right. Pretty wild, eh? I know you guys have a lot to talk about now. So this is the basic grounds, okay, to really understand how to process yourself in 200,000 years in the future of the now in real time. Okay? All right. That's a process that we all have to understand through recognition. Okay? How these things can be done at all levels of formation settings, all levels of attractions, online calculation system. But look at that. Look at the traffic flow coming out. Isn't that incredible how you can actually see yourself doing these things? How real it is in all lines of communications, how to really control the flow of space of you, and how you can create anything through its anomaly of space positions on long calculation through its setting, all through attractions and set location in your stargates, star portals, star maps, or anything in Stargate calculation, all through maps. So the mapping sequence line connection setting, once you understand the line centers and high interference, it puts everything back in tractions, right? So you understand how to get into the navigations of platforms, how to go through the travel line center, high interference in settings, right? So you have position lines that come in here, come in this way, going this way, going this way, and set locations coming all at once. So you have to stand your in and out exits. You don't go through an exit if you're trying to get in. Somebody's coming out, you don't go in, right? This is out. So you can't travel and go here because it's out. Okay, so combustion, right? All right, so it's kind of like clean up an aisle 5 and line connection system. Smash up. So there's an in, an audio, and an outlet. Inner outlet and outlet line screen and high center interference and position of programs. Direct lines calculation setting and travel in is position of its program setting and electrical line communication system and travel calculations. Point lines attractions comes in line calculation setting. Dimensional sails and travel in position of point lines attractions. Okay? So there's so many things that come in line settings when you come into your galaxies as allocation of travels. Higher line division, more lines of galaxy. Okay? So you guys just like are 1/3 of galaxy setting. Galaxy is extremely important because that's what we're coming into next. You have to stand on your user coloration to see weathers. Working with line connections of 111, position lines equal lines of 112, position lines equal lines of 113, position lines of calculations of 114, and track location. Okay. Second correlation lines of center location, nice interference, position of sun, winter, spring, and fall. Okay. Winter lines of sectors. Okay. Communication lines of summer lines. Summer line communication. Winter lines calculation setting. Spring line communications. Winter fall coordinate setting. Spring line communication string lines. High center interference. How to travel through data's and line communication setting to travel. Spring, summer, winter, fall. Okay. So we'll be into that next inline connection system, but I really want you to understand how to navigate your own system of travels, of calculation, modification, screen lines, a high calculation. Okay. There's Asgard. Okay. So wherever you are in line connection system is know exactly what's going to happen through intention. Always see you're here, right? This is you. This is you. That's you, right? But you're already here. You're there. You're not here. 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 You're there. You're already there. You're already there. You've already traveled there. So it's much easier to see ahead of things. So you don't have to worry about the next 8,000 coming in track lines and then colossal in communication, combustion. Whoa, look at that. All through calculation. All right. So it's a process location when you start with that. Think ahead, but you're not thinking ahead because you're already there. That puts you in a process to know exactly what's going on when you see a four-way corner in traffication, or a two-way stop, or a three-way stop, or a one-way stop. Okay, now you got your stop signs. Okay, this is where you guys location traffic flows, and then you got your indicators, right? We don't have indicators of this. We don't have that, right? Electrical grid lines, laser grids, power grids, high grids, electrical grids. So you understand the metabolical screen lines and high adaptation lines of plasma grids, direct modification screen line grids, electrical wall grids. There's so many lines of high center interference into graphical screen lines locations and high settings of runways that you have in track locations. So you got 4 provision lines of box and travel calculation point centers, right? Lacing lines of communication line centers of 4 track locations, right? You're coming in, this is you in tractions. That's you, right? So you're here in traffic flow, right? But you got a provision cycles, one here, one just line condition settings, offline rotation center. So you got portal here coming out, you got another portal here coming out, and so locations, and you know another portal communicate to 3 x 3000 setting that just came out. 1, 2, and 3 lines, and you're starting. You're starting, and they just came in, right? So you have to really understand the traffic flow is getting direct signals and line settings and all position of its travel and seeing ahead of everything in set locations first. You're seeing everything ahead. Okay? So you know exactly what you're going in direction, right? It's already in the mind, already in conception, already in travel, already done. That's the memory you're all coming back to in set location and navigation. Really understand how to go through your data highways and your omni highways in cycles. Okay? And don't get it in this location because you add location of motion. All right. So it's really amazing when you start to see exactly what goes on in its future adaptation of its now in real time. Okay? So how does everybody feel? I know you guys have a lot to talk about, but it's amazing what we just finished doing. Just get in the basic grounds into your modulation screens and modules and really get in your information location, your travels, and set location and settings. Get you guys prepared and ready in set locations of what's coming next in travel of mechanisms in your calculation system. All right. Talk to you soon.